Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're late, 7-8 minutes. We thought to give opportunity to a few more people to enter, but that's it, no more. Let's try to respect the time. And good morning to her as well. So, welcome to the workshop, this annual UBC conference called Engaging Citizens to Live Climate Friendly. Today we will try to give you some historical approach on environmental communication, environmental campaigns. We're also going to try to give you approach on how to build a climate campaign today, and I will tell you a story, let's call it a case study, for one tool, online tool, that is used today to create climate campaign to engage citizens to live more climate friendly. And of course, we will try to all good. We'll try to put you inside some practical, to give you some practical tasks so that we talk together, identify some of the problems today we are facing. Yes. Yes. Yes, I believe so. Well, it was written in front of the room.
They changed the rooms.
Yeah, the rooms were changed. No, I apologize. Maybe a lot of people, some other people don't know about this.
You can stay.
Yeah. So the rooms are changed in the last minute, and who knows, maybe we get some people coming inside from that other room. We should, I think. Anyway, I would like to ask you before we start, I'm going to use one interesting online tool that is collecting data about the audience. And I will ask you a very weird question. Usually people ask to remove your cell phones, but I'll ask you to use your cell phones. And to go to www.menti.com and use this code 502559. And I would like to ask you to answer me the question, how do you feel today? How do you feel today? Well, I gave you 4 answers. Maybe it's not fair, but I thought those 4 answers should be enough. Yes? Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Did somebody remember? Just a second. It's okay. I will just log in again. So, here we go. 50, 25, 59. Technology. I'm guessing there is more than 20 of you, so I hope we'll get at least 70% of people. Oh yeah, pretty good. Very good. Sleepy people. Would you like an energizer? I can give you one interesting energizer, huh? What do you say? To wake up? So, there is a little secret I learned from one friend of mine who does meditation. And she said, if you put your mouth here, this space, okay, like this, and if you scream as loud as you can, trust me, we won't hear a thing, really. And if you try to do it on my mark, you will have experience which is very interesting because you will release a lot of energy, but nobody really will be impacted, only you. Would you like to try? So it's literally just taking your hand, putting here, and then on my mark, just scream as loud as you can, but your mouth needs to touch your hand, okay? Okay? So let's try. Can we try? 1, 2, 3. Right? This is supposed to release some energy from you. I hope it worked at least a bit. Okay. What would you like to be if you could choose? I want to see some types of personalities here. Let's play a little game. It's very short. And it should be fun for you. President, rock star, superhero, brilliant scientist. Who do you want to be if you could choose? Very well. Oh, this is excellent. I love this. I love that a lot of you want to be superheroes. And this is what is my main objective today, to empower you so you can actually feel as superheroes, at least when we talk about climate. Okay? Thank you. Very interesting to see. And finally, what are your expectations for this workshop? This is where you have to write. I want you to write either a word or one short sentence on what do you expect to get from this workshop. So after the workshop, we get back maybe to this and see if your expectations are fulfilled. Ideas, knowledge, inspiration, learn something new, that this workshop is good, interesting experience with cultural exchange, something interesting. Okay, yes. New tools to engage people. Love it. I hope that expectation will be met. Inspiration, good klima. Get to know more about the climate change and how I can be the part of the change making. To get more information on how to make small changes that affect the climate to help our city improve. Great, great, great. Well, thank you so much. It was just a little mapping of your thoughts before we proceed. My name is Bogdan. I'm Serbian from Belgrade, but I live in Norway, Trondheim, and I'm environmental, let's say environmental expert working with climate engagement and sustainability in a company called Ducky. But I'm not alone here. My friend and collaborative, David Ulrich, who told me just today what he really is, and he's an ambassador at large for the Great Lakes, especially speaking of environment and environmental initiatives, is here with me. And together we will try to fulfill your expectations for today. But before that, I would like to invite David to come over and give you a little presentation. So I hope you will enjoy. David.
Well, thank you very much, Bogdan. I am absolutely delighted to be here, and I can't tell you the number of people who have said, what are you doing here? Chicago, Great Lakes, why are you here at the Baltic Sea? Well, it's a long story that I will try to make relatively short. For many, many years, I have been interested in environmental work and believe that if we are to survive as a people everywhere, that we have to treat our planet with much more respect. I had the good fortune of working for 30 years with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and one of my real early connections with the Baltic Sea was my boss for 25 of those years was a wonderful Lithuanian man originally from Kaunas, and now at age 92 is in Vilnius. And after he left Lithuania after World War II, came to Chicago, spent his life there working at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, came back and served 10 years as president of Lithuania, Valdas Adamkus, and I had a wonderful visit with him on Sunday afternoon. So that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to see an old friend. But perhaps the other important reason is that in the many years that have accumulated, and now I've been at this for 46 years, I realized that my time is shorter and the problems are more challenging, and that if I leave this conference with one good idea, it will be a total success. I now have the good fortune also of spending a lot of time in Australia, and we'll be going to the Great Lakes of Africa shortly. And this is all about taking what I have learned in 46 years and sharing it with other people. But for me, very importantly, understanding that the learning process never ends. And I am now learning even more that younger people are maybe a better source of information. We haven't done that well, my generation. You know, okay, but I think we've done more damage than we have solved problems. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'll go to Africa in a couple of weeks. That's why I will go back to Australia, and why I will then go back to Chicago and stay involved in all of this, because it is so fundamentally important, and we have no time to waste at all. And so that's why I'm here. And let's try another slide here. I can handle that. Why don't you sit down and relax? No. All I have to do is, no, that's okay. I just hit that button that pushes it to the right. If you will bear with me and trust me, and it's hard to ask someone to trust me because you only just met me. Only the deputy mayor from Kristiansand, Norway, met me before. Maybe someone else Pavel, I also met him. But trust me that what I am saying, I think, will be helpful in dealing with the issue of how we get more citizens to be climate friendly. And I want to give a little perspective on what I have lived through during my life, and then an awakening. On about December 10th of 1969, I was sitting in my dorm room of the last year of university, having majored in English, but not liking teaching very much and not knowing what to do. And I opened Time magazine. I saw a picture of the Cuyahoga River in Ohio on fire. And I thought, that should not be. That is a very major problem. Not being able to become a scientist at that point, I said, well, anybody can be a lawyer. So I went to law school to pursue environmental law, and it didn't exist at the time, but fortunately it took off very quickly and wound up being a pretty good decision. So on April 22nd of 1970, the first Earth Day was held. And in doing just a little research, I found an interesting fact that I think will be particularly relevant. I always wondered why April 22nd. And I thought springtime, that's a good time to do Earth Day types of things. But this gentleman, who was a United States Senator from the state I grew up in, Gaylord Nelson in Wisconsin. I'm officially, we call a cheesehead from Wisconsin, although I've lived in Chicago a long time. He was very concerned about the environment, and he said, now we really want to get all the students out So we've got to do this after spring break and before final exams. So a lot of people will come out. And there's some very practical decisions that are made that lead to more or less success. I think roughly 20 million people showed up for the first Earth Day in 1970, which was unprecedented. Even the word environment wasn't used much before that time. I grew up at a time when conservation and resource management were the terms that were used, but the late 60s in the US at least were civil rights, anti-Vietnam War, and the environment. So the word came into use at that time. Citizen organizations popped up all over the world, and this is where I want to make the link with citizen engagement in climate-friendly activities, because at that time it wasn't so much a matter of changing lifestyle as it was a matter of speaking out against rivers catching on fire, lakes dying, things like that. So a lot of organizations were formed. The Great Lakes was a real hotbed of activity, and just 2 weeks ago, a wonderful 91-year-old woman, Lee Botts, who was kind of the mother of the Great Lakes and really the founder of a lot of organizations, just passed away, but was a real inspiration to all of us. And we started to not only speak out publicly and have demonstrations, but get engaged in government activities. Now, to persuade people that things are important, it's often helpful to say, we've got to save the Great Lakes, or we need to save the Baltic Sea. Or now I'm learning that the Great Barrier Reef is a pretty cool place as well, and is extremely threatened by climate change, among other things like the crown of thorns starfish and agricultural runoff, and many common problems that we have in the Great Lakes and probably in the Baltic Sea as well. So getting people to identify with something they care about and something they will protect, I think is a foundation that leads to people saying, well, maybe I can ride my bike more or get an electric car rather than, getting in my gas hog and driving around. I hate to confess, I own a gas hog. I'm going to get rid of it, trust me. But as the electric cars get better, I will. The way people got involved were through formal permitting processes. Companies, municipalities needed permits in order to release air pollution or water pollution, and citizens got very engaged in that. Hazardous waste cleanups, we wound up with those all over the country. Often there would be direct human health threats. Most recently, I don't know if news about Flint, Michigan and lead in the drinking water found its way over here, but it was just a major tragedy in the US, and not surprisingly, it was a lot of poor African Americans who were subject to the lead in the drinking water. And then citizens got directly involved in enforcement actions and lawsuits against companies and municipalities. If the government wasn't doing a good enough job, the citizens would get more involved. Now, in terms of raising awareness more, our US Senator from Tennessee for many years, and then our Vice President from 92 to 2000, and although he got more votes than George Bush II, and Florida wound up in the Supreme Court and going for the Republicans, he would have been president. But it was very encouraging to see that he continued on his efforts, and I had the good fortune of being in Paris in 2015 when the agreement was reached, and he spoke at that as well. And he's an incredibly eloquent spokesman for concern about climate change. And the inconvenient truth, I think, was a very important thing to raise citizen awareness as well. He was written off as a goofball in the late 80s when he first started to talk about climate change. But obviously, what has happened since then in terms of the heat, cold, storms, flood, droughts, you name it, has been proven true. Although, believe it or not, there are still people in high places in the United States who do not think climate change is for real. They think it is a hoax perpetrated by, some say the Chinese or whatever. But so that's kind of the thing that we're struggling with. So I hope that that's a good little bit of a background as to how we start to get citizens more engaged. They've got to be aware that there's a problem, have some sense of getting involved in it, and then translating that into individual lifestyles. And some critics of all of this call it social engineering. I'm not exactly sure what they have in mind with that, but really persuading people to change the way they live. And the longer I live, the more I believe that bringing about change in one's own life and getting other people to change is one of the most difficult things in the world. And that's why I think some of the tools that Bogdan is going to make available to you are going to be very valuable. I was involved in a major change process at the Environmental Protection Agency, and actually Al Gore spearheaded the effort called Reinventing Government. And if you can imagine a more thankless task than trying to reinvent government, you're better than I. Well, I actually believed it. And I thought, well, we really can do things a lot better. After about 2 years of banging my head against the wall and trying to change the way we did business at the Environmental Protection Agency, I became convinced that I could give a written guarantee to everyone in the organization that the change would be for the better, and they would still fight it. People simply do not like to change. So I do think that it's the kind of thing that needs to be worked on. And when I was in Australia recently, I actually went to a course called Changeology, which has some underlying principles that I think are translated in the Ducky platform that might be interesting to you. But in terms of having goals and motivation, recognizing that you're going to have relapses, you need skills, you need to assess progress, are all important parts of that. You can Google Changeology and get more concerning that. The other thing is to inspire people where lots of people come together with events. And I always remember, I wasn't there, but I was very inspired by the UN Conference on the Environment in Stockholm in 1972, and I knew people who were there. And one older woman, she's probably 95 now, Betty Bostrom, and her husband, Harold Bostrom, were both there, and I had the opportunity to meet them while I was in law school, and incredibly inspiring people who dedicated a lot of their life to environmental issues. So that really kicked things off, and there are a lot of events going on. I was at an event in Australia back in, I lose track of time because every time I go there, it's a different season from Chicago, and it was like within the last 6 months. And they had something called Eco Fiesta in Cairns, C-A-I-R-N-S, Australia, and there were literally thousands and thousands of people. It's a city of about maybe 150,000 right on the Great Barrier Reef. And people came together, and there were all sorts of booths, basically with ideas about how to lead a more climate-friendly life. So that type of thing. And now, somewhat in a response to the walkouts that Greta Thunberg has inspired, and everybody's concerned, and the Prime Minister of Australia, give me a break. He's saying that she's dangerous because she's creating climate anxiety among children. And come on. It's raising awareness, but in any event, they are going to have a climate summit for students in Cairns, and I was speaking with my soulmate down in Australia, and she's going to be a facilitator at that. But it's going to try to take all of this concern and translate it into very specific actions in their own homes, in their own schools, wherever they might be, and sponsoring these events. And coming up this coming year is going to be the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And I have heard the original organizer of that speak in Washington back in April, and there are worldwide events planned for that as well. And also it'll be the 50th anniversary of the organization I work for, the Environmental Protection Agency, and we're going to try to get President Adamkus to come back to the US, and we'd like to make him president, but probably just for the celebration of the 50th anniversary. So learn from children. You're not children, you're young people. But I am becoming more and more convinced that there is tremendous inspiration that we all can gain from you. If you'll listen to a little of our wisdom, we will listen to a lot of your brilliant ideas and energy and all of that, and together we can make a lot happen. Really, some of the early recycling activities were kids in school who learned about it, who went home and started to nag at their parents about not recycling things. We had quite an environmental education program, which some of the conservative politicians felt was brainwashing children, so they cut the funds for us. But that was early starting, and there are young people all over. There's a young woman up in Michigan right now who's trying to get a ban on plastic bags. And I think in Australia it was a 13 or 14-year-old who really got things going. And then, because I travel so much now, I kind of don't sleep anymore. I just wake up in the middle of the night, and I stumbled, there's something called Eco Watch. If you don't get the service, it's fantastic. And there's a young French student, his name is Maxime Leroux, who has created an app called One Save Per Day. And basically, it is designed to empower people to, basically the idea is if I do one thing every day, and a lot of people do one thing every day, it really starts to add up fast.